care. It's not 6. Who cares? Hi. Oh, man. It's been a bit. Oh, we'll give folks a few seconds to get in. Let me talk about some fun stuff. Let's talk about human malware right off the kick, shall we? So, as most of you can imagine, and you can probably hear if you've watched my last video, I'm doing quite a lot better. I don't sound like death warmed over. I'm not like, I'm not constantly like coughing or anything crazy like that. So for the video that came out 2 weeks ago now, I had to do so much editing, and that's why in a lot of that B-roll you don't see it, but there's tons of points where I was just like, I would say a few words and then cough, or like say a sentence and then going to like a coughing fit, and I still do. So I have this gigantimous bottle of water here, because even now, like, one of the things I do still have kind of lingering is, there's still some stuff down in here that as I talk, if I talk too much, and I've had a lot of meetings at work the last couple of days, so, like, I'm constantly muting my mic so that I can have effectively a coughing fit, trying to get the last bits of junk out of my lungs. And then other than that, like, the only lingering thing that's still going on is, I don't have quite as much energy as is my normal, which is not to say that I have boundless. I'm not some 6-year-old kid or anything, but if I could do, say, like half an hour of walking with my dog, now I can do like 15 minutes, and then I'm kind of out of juice for a little bit, or at least I'll be like kind of pushing it, and I can feel my body going like, "Hey, we need to chill," and that's something I've heard from a couple other folks that have had the human malware, in that it really does kick your butt for way longer than you think. But thankfully, like, all the rest of the stuff is gone. Most of it only lasted 4 or 5 days, really. Like, there was 3 days where I was basically constantly going back and forth between fevers and chills, and just my body felt sore and miserable, and I had no energy whatsoever. I was basically sequestered here in my bedroom. And despite the fact that, like, anytime I opened my door to basically get, like, a meal delivered from brother-in-law James, I didn't see my lady really at all for the first week, and I was wearing a mask, they still got sick. So, it's a nightmare. Thankfully, like, brother-in-law James got past it pretty quick. And then it's mostly just my lady who kind of got it last, who's still got some lingering stuff, but she's past the worst of it. So thankfully, like, the house as a whole is doing a lot better. Some fun things. I kind of left this on my desk on purpose, and you guys might laugh. So this, which was an old bottle for like margarita mix from Costco. This is like almost exactly 60 fluid ounces. And I would drink, so I had this, like, let me see, I've got another prop here, but I had this like powdered Gatorade stuff that I've had in my house for a while, and each of these packets makes up 20 ounces, and this bottle is like a 59.2, so basically almost exactly 60. So I was making up batches of the zero sugar Gatorade, and I would go through an entire thing of that a day, plus about 3 or 4 of these full of water. That's how much I was trying to keep myself hydrated through all of it, just because when you're super sick with any of that stuff, if you don't keep hydrated, it gets way worse. So that's a little peek into my life the last couple weeks of just in general feeling kind of miserable. Now, like, the nice part about that is I lost like 10 pounds. But it's all mostly like water weight, so it won't like stay gone. Although I've been working on some stuff like walking my dog and little bits of exercise here and there to help trim down some. But yeah, let's now that we've been here for a couple minutes. Let's actually talk Triple Crown, and I'll stop talking human malware and my fun adventure with my gift from the Triple Crown. By the way, there are some rumors, and I purposely left this out in the video, but there are some rumors, I don't know if we can substantiate them, that somebody knowingly came to Triple Crown testing positive for human malware. If that's true, what a jerk. It's like just such a reckless thing to do. Because you have to think about it, right? In the fish community, especially you got some of your speakers there, you got a lot of older folks. You got a lot of people that might not be in the best physical health. Super, super, super reckless to do that. But hopefully that's not actually the case, but I've heard some stuff. So, yeah. Okay, let me talk Triple Crown a little more directly. And I know, like, my video where I shared my experience, I go over a lot of these things. But I want to cover the stuff that might apply to folks in chat, folks who are watching this afterward, whatever, in more directly, instead of sharing the whole of my experience and talking about the good and the bad. So, number one, what I would say is this is definitely a smaller, nerdier convention. So if you really want something that's not about the vendors being present, and this is not necessarily a dig at Aquashella, but Aquashella to me is a big vendor show. There's this massive vendor room. There's tons of your bigger vendors, your Fluvols, your Sea Chems, your bigger parts of our industry that are present. The biggest vendor at Triple Crown, I think you would technically say, is either Dustin's Fish Tanks or Swiss Tropicals. Right? So you're either buying foam sponges or like some plants. You didn't have like Fluvol, right? But you also had locals and a lot of other cool stuff. You had like Ryan from Wild Fish Tanks had his booth there, and he was selling like fish and all sorts of stuff. Okay, yeah. Stephen P makes a point. Awaze and Zoomed were there, but they didn't like... You don't necessarily think of Zoomed as huge in the industry, and Awaze is kind of still breaking through. They're not the size of, like, the big boys, right? Zoomed is not New Life Spectrum as far as, like, food is concerned. Although, they had some nice stuff. Did Cobalt even have, like, a vendor booth, though? Paul's mentioning Cobalt, and I'm forgetting them. Maybe on purpose, because I personally don't think too highly of Cobalt. But I've seen a lot of nightmares with them, so maybe that's why. But, like, I'm just trying to think, like, they're not huge. And also, like, you don't have, like, huge vendor booths the way we think about them at some of these bigger shows, right? That's, like, a single table. Even if it is Cobalt or Awaze, it's, like, a single table where you're not seeing, like, a reasonably good booth. And, yeah, Desert Fish Keeper, absolutely. Zoomed is big in reptiles, but very small in fish. This is a dedicated fish convention. So, for the audience there, Zoomed is very small. In reptiles, yeah, I fully agree. They're massive. You can buy everything from, like, light bulbs to reptile enclosure stuff from Zoomed. And in the reptile side of life, yeah, they're huge. But fish, kind of tiny, right? But what I'm more trying to say is, if you want something that's more catering toward the people who are members of these clubs, like the American Cichlid Association, the American Killifish Association, this is more like a happenstance where several of these small conventions came together in one. And the one thing that I will say is I'm not certain that this will happen again. But if it does, that's why we're talking about this topic. Like, so if you're, like, really into very specific things, if you're the person who is going to go to the American Livebearers Association convention, then you probably would want to go to Triple Crown. But if you're that person who's making this choice of, like, do I want to go to Aquashella where there's going to be several thousand people, and it's going to be a way bigger experience, versus this tiny one that's like really kind of like a couple of rooms and a hallway. As far as the main show floor, there's a lot of speaker rooms, and that's different. Yes. But if you're that person who wants that kind of bigger, flashier thing, you're probably going to go to an Aquashella. But let me talk about why I would encourage you, and I'm going to talk both sides of this, don't worry, why I would encourage you, if Triple Crown happens again, or to go to something more like Keystone Clash, Cataclysm, the ALA, the AKA, the ACA, any of these if they have their individual conventions, why I would encourage you to try those. Number one, the speakers are going to be some of like the best people in the industry. And what I mean is you're going to have a fish nerd speaker. You're not likely to have, I mean, granted, there was one talk from, I'm spacing right now. I can't remember her name, but Seagrass Farms. It's an S. It starts with an S. I feel like an idiot right now. Because the only person I can think of right now is my coworker, and it's definitely not her. This is what happens when you have way too many meetings, when you've got, like, COVID brain going on. But yeah. So, Sandy, thank you. Sandy Moore from Seagrass. She's very nice. She's wonderful. And whatever your opinions may be of Seagrass, whether they're positive or negative, Sandy Moore is awesome. And Paul Sotero is basically summing up what I'm trying to say in a much more elaborate way, which is that the Triple Crown is very educational. You can go there and meet with experts or a ton of people who, whether they're local or came in from all over the country or the middle of Canada, whatever it may be, people came all the way from Australia and Europe. Most of those speakers, mind you, but there are some people that came from quite far away. You're going to get relatively knowledgeable super nerds. Some of the questions that were being asked at some of the Rainbow Fish talks are things that I would never think about. Some of the people that I met, like one person I met, came up to me and showed me pictures of how they turned their entire room into basically like a giant living riparium that is localized to only the kind of plants and some of these things that you would find where rainbow fish live. And these pictures, I wish I would have asked them to email them to me, because they are incredible what this couple has done. And it's a couple, because the lady of the couple is really into terrestrial plants. And the guy of the couple has gotten into them because of her, but he's really into setting up like biotope type stuff. So he's created this, he's got this big fish tank. It's like 180 gallons or so, but it's custom built, that has rainbow fish down below, and then it feeds this big waterfall misting system of all these plants that take up this whole corner of their house. It's incredible. Incredible. And you're going to get people like that. You're going to get people that come in and ask these super specific, pointed questions to a topic that's basically like your intro to rainbow fish. Because everybody in that room probably already knows the intro to rainbow fish talk. We're talking about the people that are the super nerds. Or if you go to like there's a gentleman there, he was, I think, 91, and he's been keeping fish since the 40s. And he was talking about, and I didn't see this talk, I kind of regret not seeing it, but Dan, apparently from Dan's Fish, thought it was phenomenal. But he was talking about how fish keeping has evolved over his period of time of keeping fish. And this is a guy who's forgotten more than I'm ever going to know. Right? You're talking about somebody who's been in this hobby so long and knows so much that he's forgotten a ton. That is where I think you're going to have the best from the perspective of what the convention offers. Now, the second part of this is you're not going to see the big YouTubers at this kind of show. The biggest, I would say, channels there, other than if you account for Dustin's fish tanks, and that's because his business is literally an hour away from where the convention was. So it makes sense that he got a booth. And he was there for, I think, one day, maybe two. He was walking around saying hi to people. I talked to him for like, I think 5 minutes. It was not long, but you had Lucas, of course, LRB Aquatics, and then Ryan from Wild Fish Tanks. I think those are the two largest channels that were present. And I think third is going to end up being like, Dan from Dan's Fish. But that's it. You got mostly small YouTubers, which the nice part about that. Oh yeah, by Rico by weight. Clearly, I am killing it in YouTube. I am destroying the competition. No, but what was really awesome was that because you don't have kind of the huge crowds that tends to happen when you've got someone like, say, KG Tropicals or Aquarium Co-op, or if you were to have Coral Fish 12G George, and these people who have these very large channels, because you don't have these huge crowds, it's way easier to talk to any of the people that you would want to meet. I got an opportunity to have a ton of time with people like Paul Sotero and his wife. I got to sit down and talk with Carrie at Science Gal Aquatics, who's in chat. I had an opportunity to meet a ton of people, and some that I've thankfully had the fortunate ability to meet before, but tons of people that we could sit and talk for half an hour, 45 minutes, or I sat down to lunch with Lady Diane and Dan from Dan's Fish and a couple other folks, or I had an entire lunch where it was literally just me and Mike from the Fish Tank Barn, just shooting the breeze with each other, right? At those bigger conventions, there's so many people that becomes a little impossible. So if you have smaller YouTubers, like maybe you love all the Tennessee Fish Mafia people, which you should, they're fantastic, and you want to just sit and hang out, you want to go to something like Triple Crown, because since there's so less people, you get that really cool, fun hangout experience, as opposed to the chaos that is going to be 3, 4, 5,000 people walking through a show. There might have been 500 people, and maybe it's more, but it really felt that way. It didn't feel like a ton. That's actually, Nabokov fan, you have a great point. I've got to get your super chats in a second. It sounds like this is the fireside chat of conventions, which hopefully the few younger people here, you know your history, but if not, fireside chat is something that the president used to do way back in the old times, where it was something done on TV and originally on radio, where the president would speak directly to the American public. And it felt like you were in the living room with the president, right? This is like that. I mean, you could easily have gone to the the hospitality suite and sat down and had a drink with Gary Lang and just chatted with him. Easily. Because there's just not a ton of people. Now let's talk about why you wouldn't want to go to the Triple Crown. Okay? Because I want to cover both sides. We know how psycho I am. Thank you. The Mad Aquarist, man. Chris, I have a sit down that I specifically carved out of a video with Chris because it's so funny. And that's coming out this Saturday. So look forward to that because he had me howling laughing. But we had 900 paid registrants on just the ACA side. So we probably had more like 1,000 people. But to me, that's the thing. To me, it didn't feel like that much. Until you got to a couple of the certain things, it felt very small. And I love that. Like, I love the fact that it doesn't feel like an almost unbearable mass of people surrounding you. You could easily just kind of move around and go through the vendor room or check out all the fish that were in the competition. It was easy. There was room at all of the talks, except for a couple of auctions. That's where it got a little crazy, but that's where it's a little more fun, right? The auctions were fun. The bitch auction was hilarious. I had a blast at that thing, just watching and observing. But let's talk about why you wouldn't want to go Triple Crown. Because we have to be critical, right? Number one, I think part of this is because of how it got put together, because they haven't really done this before, to my knowledge. Organization was a little lacking. And what I mean is that you had kind of two different places where you had to come in and register. And because of how the rooms were set up, speaker rooms weren't static. It wasn't the same rooms the entire time. You were kind of moving around. So it could be really easy to not know where, like, okay, I'm going to go see the talk from Seagrist Farms, and then I want to go upstairs and listen to Johannes Graf talk, but I don't know which room it is. So some of that was a little haphazard. Second, and this is, I think this is maybe the most critical thing, is like, from a perspective of me, we have these awesome swag bags, which I can't wait till mine finally shows up. It's still being shipped to me. But there's a lot of great stuff in it. But because they're spread out all over the place, there was kind of a need where they were like shipping swag bags around between the two different registration places to help account for as people were coming in. And so that's more of the organizational side. But from a like customer perspective, having to be like, okay, I registered with this one club. Oh, well, you need to go upstairs and find that desk. Chris, you're killing me. Anyway, so from that perspective, it was a little bit of a mess. And then some of the events in general were cool if you went to them. So, like, going to Rusty's Fish House was really, really awesome. However, it was extremely packed because you're trying to fit, like, I don't know, 100 people at a place designed for really maybe like 10 tops. I mean, they made some space. They did some stuff to help accommodate everybody. But you would get lots of kind of long lines. And when you're at a convention that feels small and you're not really dealing with that the whole time, when you then all of a sudden deal with that, it kind of puts a little chip in the experience. But then you realize, like, oh, you're just with a ton of fish nerds and you could sit at literally any table and strike up a conversation. And you're going to have fun because you're all just like psycho fish people. So in that respect, it was pretty awesome. But if you want to see, like, those big YouTubers, if you want to meet Corey from Aquarium Co-op, or John and Lisa from KG Tropicals, George, Coralfish 12G, we could go on and on, right? I think of those are kind of the three biggies that I think about, because there's some jerk in Nova Scotia that nobody cares about. But also you've got, like, more folks like Primetime Aquatics and some of the other folks who are kind of like that 100,000 range, right? Jeez, was it 250 a second? That's why it felt so insane. Anyway, then you're not going to see them at something like Triple Crown. You're going to see them at Aquashella, and you're going to want to go to Aquashella. So if your goal is to meet those kind of people, which they're all pretty awesome, I would say it's worth, if you have the opportunity to go meet them in person and get a few minutes to talk with them, do so, because they're great people. Then that's what you're going to look at. So that's my 2 cents. Now, the question has been asked in chat: if it happens again, would I go again? So if we'll recall, because I want to put this out there, my own club, the Greater Seattle Aquarium Society, hosted AGA. And after my experience where my club did everything they could to make it go well, I do not want to go to another AGA. Would I go to another Triple Crown? I think if there were a few small changes, I think it's actually great in Louisville. I think Louisville was a blast. I liked being specifically in Kentucky, other than you do deal with some interesting storms. Some folks had to deal with that. But it's not a super expensive flight, for me at least. And granted, I got my tickets really early, so maybe that's part of it. But if there were some small changes to the organization, I would happily go again. Because I know it's not going to be insanely huge. And that opportunity to sit and hang out and talk with folks like you folks in chat, whether you're creators or not, it's there, it's prevalent, it's easy. There's plenty of time to sit and just have a nice conversation. And when it comes to conventions for me personally, that's what I care about the most. If I went to Aquashella, do I think that's going to be the same? Not necessarily. I think because of the number of people that go there, which we're talking, 5,000 plus, and you get way bigger crowds, it's going to be a lot harder to sit down and film the amount of stuff I filmed. Like, I have one more video coming out this weekend, and then another video the weekend after. So basically I got 4 videos worth of content out of one convention. And I spent 2 days of my basically effective 3 days at the convention just hanging out and babbling with people, doing very little things other than taking a few pictures. Because it's not so packed, so you have that extra time, you have that ability, it's way more possible than some of the larger conventions. So for me, would I go again? Yes. It was very fun. Do I think it's going to happen again? Not really. Call me a pessimist, but I don't know what's going to happen again. Chris might have a different opinion, Mr. Biggs in chat, but, you'll have, ACA will have their own convention, of course. I think if I were to look at what I want to do next, it's either Aquashella just so I can have that experience, or probably something like Keystone Clash. Which Keystone Clash is, again, favoring that smaller kind of show, having a little more fun, focusing more on the fun side. Let me get some super chats that have gone on now that I've burned a ton of time. So from Nabokov fan, you got 2 of them. Jeez, man, you didn't have to do 2. Before all this went down, I sent an email emergency update. Then real stuff happened. I just wanted to say how much I appreciate what you do, sir. Thanks, man. Needless to say, we appreciate you and the content, your help on our tanks. We all love fish, but we're a family and thankful. Seems everyone's okay. Yeah, thankfully, it doesn't seem like anybody who got sick at the convention is doing that bad. I think most of us had a couple days where we felt just kind of miserable, but then other than that, we all got through pretty quick. And it's just dealing with the lingering annoyances that come with any kind of respiratory issue like that, right? Whether you were having bronchitis or some kind of respiratory infection, whatever it may be, you're going to get stuff in your lungs. You got to cough it up. It takes a while and it kind of sucks. No, Keystone Clash, I don't think that's not the one from Fisherman Fever. That's, geez, why can I not remember what he's doing? I wasn't even talking to him about it. But yeah, no, Keystone Clash has been around a little bit longer. That's not specifically James's thing that he's organizing. That's right, he's doing Aquaticon. That's what it is. Thank you, Rico. See, it's people who know way more than me. Mike from the Fish Tank Bard. I really enjoyed the Triple Crown, along with all that you said. I really like the ability to find and buy rare fish. My wallet, maybe not. So that's the other thing. I purposely went there knowing I was not buying any fish. Because I'm very lucky, and I'm going to put that out there, I'm very lucky that I've made certain friends in the rainbow fish side of life that I can basically get almost any rainbow I want, kind of whenever I want. There's some caveats there. There's some patience and all that kind of stuff. You got to wait a little bit, but I have enough connections, luckily, that if there is really some specific fish I want, I can get them. I just might have to wait a few months. And I'm okay with that. But in the case of a lot of your rare Livebearers or some of your harder to find killifish, this was the place to go. And there are quite a few really cool cichlids that were there too, outside of the show, right? But you can get them. So I totally agree with Mike there in that if your goal is to pick up some really awesome fish, that show is really awesome. And so it's going to be some of the other, you'll have the Greater Chicago Cichlid Swap will be one of those. Keystone Clash is going to be another one just because of some of the people that live in that area. You're going to get access to some really awesome fish. Cataclysm, of course, if you're looking for some form of catfish, is going to be amazing. I'm sure there's got to be something really crazy out in Canada. We just don't hear about it so much in the States because you got to deal with the borders and all that kind of nonsense. Which, Desert Fish, welcome to Suda McGill. Thank you very much. Let me get a couple of these questions out of chat that I've now that I've been babbling forever. I was kind of hoping Johnny from Dan's Fish was going to be there, but they brought in a huge order, so it was just Dan. Just because I want to BS with Johnny in person. Bob Purcell, human malware aside, would you go back to Triple Crown? Yeah. So, yes. I would like to do it again. Just hopefully they make a few small changes that just make it easier. Let's see here. Fishaholic. Easy. So, good to see that you're feeling better. Just wondering why it's called the Triple Crown. Hope to meet you at Fishtoberfest. I'll definitely be at Fishtoberfest, so will be Chris Biggs. We'll both be speaking at that thing. I'm sure his will be way better than mine. I haven't even figured out exactly what I'm doing for my talk in October, and it's like a month and a half away. Actually, I kind of have an idea. I'm just not sure if that's what I want to settle on. So it's the Triple Crown because it's the American Cichlid Association, the American Livebearers Association, and the American Killifish Association's conventions all coming together at once. So it's three of the bigger fish associations that are in the United States doing their conventions as one singular convention. And then ANGFA NA kind of just like tagged on at the end. There was like 10 of us that showed up. There was more than that. I think the Rainbow Fish group had something like 30 people register through ANGFA. It's probably more than that. I'm sure if I asked Gary, he could tell me, but that's not the part I care about. The part I care about is that the talks are great. The people were fun. The actual location was pretty decent because you had relatively good access to a lot of like restaurants and food and all that kind of stuff in the area. So if you didn't want to just like eat in the hotel restaurant over and over again, you could very easily without going very far, get to something else. And it was not terribly expensive. Especially if you got like the group rate early on, the hotel wasn't horrible, but there's also like cheaper hotels within short walking distance if you're trying to save a few bucks. Paul Sandero, it seemed like once the hotel was booked, the four organizations did a lot of talking to each other, but otherwise, I'll go again if they have it. It was, as they say, New Giza pizza. All right, good to know. Kingfisher's Catch. If I had to choose, would I do Kalitawa or the Myra? So, me specifically, this is an interesting question. I love the way the Kalitawa look, but because I know one of the main Kalitawa breeders that's here in Seattle, I would probably choose the Myra because then there's some fish diversity between the two of us. So that's probably where I would look. Now, as far as like what I want to keep, I think the Tawa's a cooler fish, but the Myra is like, it's like this. You know, it's very minimal in its difference. They're both very, very cool fish. And realistically, even if you gave me those two options and you told me that like I would have to lose my running river rainbows, I would tell you to like take a hike. I'm keeping my running rivers. I like my running rivers more than both those fish. But that's all personal taste, right? Uh-oh, Lumpy Dog. Why, Bentley, why? What did I miss, Lumpy Dog? What did I miss? Why what, Lumpy Dog? Talk to me, buddy. Legion Aquatics. I have some quick questions I was hoping you could answer. What's the best temp for guppies? It really depends on the species of guppy. But most of your like really nice fancy ones that are coming out of like say Thailand and all that, you're probably looking at more like 76 to 78. They do like to be a little bit warmer, and I would bring them in warmer at first and slowly bring them down as you have a couple generations of babies. So like the first generations of babies that you have in your tank, excuse me, then I would go from like 80 to 78. And then when that generation grows out and has their babies, then I'd bring it down to 76. And part of the reason why I would say this is because you will find that at those higher, and if you were to go lower temperatures, you will see a dispersion in the rate at which you see male versus females in your births. So you'll see significantly more females at one temperature and significantly more males at another. And if you get kind of that middle ground, then you'll see about that 50-50 ratio, which is nice. What size tank for dojo loaches, and is having a blue night light on a tank bad? Is having blue light on a tank at night bad? Not entirely, but if you are in an area where like blackbeard algae is a normal thing for you, then yes, I would say it is bad. I tend to deal with a lot of blackbeard algae if I'm not really cautious about my blue light. So I'm naturally, inherently, I don't run any light at night. I actually think it's better for the fish because when they're in captivity, they get more rest time when you have no light at night. And you might have some ambient light that comes through a window or something like that, or maybe you have like a small light that's on somewhere in some corner of a room that creates some kind of ambient light. That's fine. It doesn't have to be perfectly black. But I like to minimize the amount of light that I have on my tanks at night just to give them a little bit more rest. It's just something that happens when you have light on. They're not like getting full rest, if you will. And I'm sure somebody's going to be like, scientifically, you're full of crap, Bentley. And that's fine. This is the way that my brain works. It's what makes it easy for me. Let's see here. Dojo loaches. That's the other one I need to answer. So because dojo loaches get pretty big, I would be looking at no less than a 55 gallon. Realistically, I'd want to go to 75 plus, and if you can, get yourself like a 6-foot tank, like a 125 or something. Because eventually, I mean, you're going to have big chonky team thick like I've got, and they need some room to swim. They take up room. They produce some waste. So giving them extra room is going to be good. Now, can you keep a single dojo loach in like a 75 with a bunch of other fish? Yeah, of course. But would that loach probably end up better long-term in like a 125? Yes, of course. Right? There's things like that. So hopefully that answers those. And again, folks, Rico's taking care of it, but at Bentley Pasca makes it super easy for me to see stuff. If you have questions, shoot them at me. It's mostly, we're in Q&A time now. Fish Tank Dan, 8th months. What's up? Got the Blue Hawaiian Moscow badge. Boom. Good to see you in here. Rico Stan, 23 months. That's dedication. You've put up with me for almost 2 years. Oh, hey, I have one of these. I'm glad I used it for something important. Oh, Lord. Alley Cat, good to see you. Hope you're feeling better. Absolutely. I feel a lot better. I have a small pile of... I don't know if... let me see if you can hear them. Can you hear these? A small pile of negative COVID tests that says I no longer have the death. Although I've still got some extra stuff to deal with. But, you know, that's any respiratory of anything. You're going to deal with that stuff for a while. But, yeah, significantly better than what I used to be. And then Stephen P. Aquardix. It was really good to meet that man in person. Ooh, the Bozemonai member badge. Yeah, if you put up with me for more than 2 years, you get the Bozemonai badge. Which, let me talk about a couple things real fast. So, I've settled on what my piece of merch is going to be for Fishtoberfest. I have to get it, start working on getting it ordered and get the art in and all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to make a limited run. So, like, we did hats for Triple Crown. I'm going to do fish room towels for Fishtoberfest. And I think I might even let you guys decide. I don't know. I've been waffling back and forth between whether I want to put the Blue Hawaiian Moscow guppy art on it or whether I want to put Danger Noodle on it. And I'm kind of leaning toward Danger Noodle because I want to pay a little homage to Danger Noodle's passing and do a fish room towel with Danger Noodle on there because I think it'd be hilarious. So I don't know. Chat, if you have an opinion, let me know. I want to know. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a nice fish room towel. I think it's going to probably be black or maybe navy blue. I do love my blues. Oh, Danger Noodle Easy is crushing it already. Not that there's a lot of things there, but... all right, let's see here. Kingfisher's Catch. Can you speak to Extreme's lineup of food? What's the good, the bad, and the ugly? I can speak to it with an extreme amount of bias. And the reason why I say this is because I deal with rainbows for the most part, and rainbows are beautiful and dumb in all the best ways. And they've got those very small throats, despite the size of their mouth. Their throat's a lot smaller. So I tend to steer away from any of your pellet or granule food. I like flake because I can grind it up. And also, it's very easy for me to grind up for like the guppy mansion to make sure that even the teeny tiniest babies can get stuff versus the adults, right? So I tend to walk around with a big tub of flake, basically, that I mix up myself. If I don't have specifically the community crave, then I mix 50-50 krill and spirulina. There are some products that Extreme is working on, and I've been fortunate enough to test and provide feedback on, and they're kind of refactoring and making them better. And then when those come out, they'll probably get just kind of jumbled into that mix, because so far I've seen some pretty good results with them, and I know with extra tinkering they'll get better, right? I love the sinking wafers for cories and plecos and any of your bottom dwelling fish. Those sinking wafers are amazing. You just can't feed them as the only food to a bunch of plecos, because eventually they're kind of not getting enough vegetable matter through, and they'll blow it up a little bit. So what I like to do is feed something like green beans or zucchini, any of those. You could do pumpkin, whatever, any of your significant real veg food that you would feed to your plecos anyway, for a lot of your like bristlenose and your ancistrus, all that kind of stuff, right? I'll mix that stuff in like twice a week or so, and then use tabs, and include a fasting day, just because I fast basically all my fish. I don't like the betta pellet. We were trying it for a while with brother-in-law James's bettas, and what I've run into is just that it feels like it's very easy for the bettas to overfeed on that particular food and get that super bloated belly, and we've lost a betta because of that. So I kind of steer away from that particular product now, and it's totally like bias. I'm sure there's some way to like be smarter about it, and I'm just a dummy, but it's just personal preference. Some of their bigger stuff that they use for some of their bigger cichlids and stuff, I've never tried, so I really can't realistically talk about it. But in general, I've noticed that when I've tried even like the Nice? The Nice is a pellet that's designed, it's like supposed to be a kind of a color enhancing formula. I've tried grinding that up in a coffee grinder or a spice grinder and making it a powder, and my fish ignore it compared to like the krill flake or the spirulina flake. So I don't really like that product. And they have a lot of success with other fish. A lot of like cichlids and stuff seem to really like that food, but I don't. And they take even that feedback, even on a product line that they've had out for a while, they will take that feedback and pay attention to it, which I think is really cool. I'm trying to think what else is in the line. I think that covers most of the foods. I'm sure there's something I'm missing. Oh, the nano stuff. That's about the only granule I do like is the nano, because it's so small. But I find myself gravitating toward flake more instead, just because it floats longer. And this is something that Nabokov fan has just mentioned. So Nabokov fan said, my biggest issue with Extreme's food is that it makes the tank stink. Yeah, if you really overfeed it, it can get a little smelly. And it will never sink to the bottom, ever. I've noticed that with the flake, and that's kind of why I like it, because I don't necessarily want too much of it sinking. Some of it does, some of it doesn't. I think it depends on the formula, which is very interesting. Some of their like tester stuff that I've worked on sank like right away, and it doesn't float very well. And it's some of the things that they try to tinker with and work on, because they want it to stay mid and high water column for a lot of those fish that are they're designing those fish to eat that, right? So like if it goes below a certain point, my angelfish ignore it, which is why I'll feed that flake pretty well to them, and then I'll throw in like something that is inherently a sinking food to feed the plecos in that tank, right? So I think it's a good mix, especially if you're mixing a lot of your fish together, like you have some cories and some of this and some of that. Mix your foods together, and you tend to find a really good path in the grand scheme of things. My only biggest thing is making sure that I have some level of vegetable content and not like just pure protein. going into my fish. But yeah, after 48 hours, it should sink. I've noticed that with certain pellet foods, because you know what other food does that a lot? This stuff. Tropical. Their larger granules like do not sink. They just keep floating forever. And my dojo loaches actually love that. But yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of like it. Granted, I also I've gotten really tactically good at how I'm feeding stuff. And yeah, Sarah has finally brought back the correct ONIP tab. So I probably will be giving Sarah a bunch of my money again. Because I love those stupid things. I'm so low. Dude, so I have this tactical reserve that I've kept between Tropicals tabs and ONIP. And it's this much in my container. It's a tiny amount left. And I've been saving it for when I want to do filming or photography of the Guppy Mansion. Because then it brings lots of guppies together and makes it easier. I've been hoarding it just in case I need it for stuff like that. How sad is that? Oh man. Mike Stambaugh. Apparently you're going to go to the Rainbow Fish Convention in Canada that Gary was talking about, the Triple Crown. No, I'm not. It's just because the pandemic caused them both to happen in the same year, because originally they were going to happen at the same time. I just can't right now. Between a lot of my stuff I have going on at work and some other stuff, especially recovering from COVID and some other things that I'm having to take care of, some personal family stuff, I just can't make it. I basically Fishtoberfest and Triple Crown are all of my traveling, and I'm going to be bunkered down for almost the rest of the year. But next year maybe we'll see. We'll see how things shake out next year. I'll try and pick something. I'm kind of eyeballing either Aquashell or Keystone Clash, maybe both, depending on how the things swing and all that kind of nonsense. It's all a balancing game. Well, Scuba Steve, they're both the same. They're both the same. They're both the same. They're both annoying and a pain in the butt. Kingfisher guys, I use a Burr Grinder for their Pee-wee mix. It's pretty decent in my auto feeders plus the community flakes. That's interesting. Yeah, I have a little spice grinder I got off Amazon. I didn't get the cheapest one. I got a decent one because I wanted something that would actually get it fairly fine so that I could feed powders. But there's some interesting stuff that Extreme is trying to work on right now that I'm very curious, whenever I get to test it, what it'll be like. They have some cool ideas. They have cool concepts. I don't know what they want to try and do, which I like that. I like when a company is more open about those kind of things, or at least listens to feedback from some dumb idiot on the YouTubes, right? Not a Cup fan. A request suggests an info to help everyone. BBA staghorn is a red algae, and I think a dedicated video on the topic would be so helpful. I can help with people to discuss with you. That's interesting. Shoot me an email just so that I have something that kind of is a reminder, because I'll be honest, I still have some leftover human malware brain going on, and outside of all my requirements for work right now, because I'm right near a really critical launch that I'm the main person in charge of for all of my entire quality assurance org. Yeah, well, 3 months in and they put me in charge of this massively important project. It's basically eating every ounce of my brain power. So, if Fishtoberfest is a little wild, get prepared. We might have a weird talk. Might have something weird coming out. But it'll come on YouTube, don't worry. I'll film it. Oh, I need a little water while I read and then answer this question. Kingfisher's Catch. Do Gudeids have a place in your future fish room? Here's the problem. My future fish room will sit at a warmer temperature. And a lot of the stuff that I like when it comes to Livebearers tend to prefer slightly cooler temperatures. I can't remember. I do say, trout Gudeids. I do like them quite a lot. I think they're really cool fish. There was... I'm trying to remember. Ryan from Wild Fish Tanks brought this not melanistic, I think leucistic. Or is it melanistic? One of the two. It looks like a kind of silvery, whitish bodied fish with black cow splotches on it. And it's a teeny tiny little live bearer. And it's super cool. I am sure that like Mike from the Fish Tank Bar or someone else is going to know. And because I think Mike had some too in the show. Really cool little fish. And I liked that one quite a lot. There's also like there's a killifish that's yellow with a lot of like black splotching on it. It has kind of like, almost looks like the bumblebee platies that are out there. And I really, that fish caught my eye a lot. And those are fish kind of outside my normal realm. Scyphia multipunctata. See, I'm not going to know that, but if I use the Googles, maybe it will help me. No, it's not that. I don't think it's quite that deep a body. It was a lot thinner looking fish. That does look similar. It's just a little chunkier body. But anyway, this was a much more thinner body, kind of like... Thank you. It's melanistic gambusia. That's what it was. Josh Hayden. Those are just super cool. They looked cool. They're something that I don't normally see. It was very interesting. It's kind of like one of those fish where I was like, that could be cool to keep. Although if I was going to go any kind of live bearer, probably going to be the Yucatan sailfin molly. I just love that giant mohawk that they have, and I think they're a really cool fish. And sailfin mollies are just something kind of interesting to me. I used to keep cockatiels when I was a kid. I think I've talked about it, but you kind of get into something that's got a mohawk on it, and you find something that like brings back some weird nostalgia in the fish world that way. You kind of gravitate toward it. Uh-oh, best tank baits for killifish. We'll get to that in a sec. The Great One 101. Wayne Gretzky? Would you recommend a Thrive or Easy Green? Yes. So, here's the thing. Both Thrive and Easy Green are very, very similar in their composition. The main difference is Easy Green has slightly more nitrogen than Thrive. And assuming that you can get them at a similar price, I think it's basically a coin flip between the two as to whether you're going to have success. I use Easy Green, but that's mostly because I live not terribly far from Aquarium Co-op. So I support a local fish store that way. And you might argue at this point they're big enough, they're kind of like not the local fish store anymore, but they're my local fish store, right? So that's what I go with. I would much rather look at something like Thrive or Easy Green than, say, the Seachem Flourish line. But that's a personal choice. I'm kind of lazy. I like an all-in-one. Desert Fish Keeper is saying Thrive Plus if you're pushing the CO2. Yeah, so I go... One thing to keep in mind is that the way that I keep my tanks when I am using CO2, if I don't use CO2 in everything, I keep my CO2 levels fairly low. I like to go what I call the American barbecue method, low and slow, right? I'll have a 40-gallon breeder, and I'll put 2 bubbles a second of CO2 into it, which is not very much. It's just a tiny uptick. It gives me a little bit denser growth, a little bit better color. So it's just enough to look like a CO2 tank with the plants that I choose, but not go crazy and have me in there having to trim it every other week. So because of the way I do things, Easy Green works phenomenally. But if you were to go much higher levels of CO2, I would kind of agree with Desert Fish Keeper. You might want to look at something like Thrive Plus. Are you going to have a significant difference between the two? Could you be using like the ADA line, or could you be using Brightwell's Florin line? Of course. And you're going to see great success with any of these. My like secondary favorite is Florin Multi from Brightwell, and that's in certain cases. If I have a really heavy fish load, so I'm naturally kind of creating a lot of phosphates and a lot of nitrates in that tank, that's when I'll use Florin Multi, because Florin Multi is basically all of my micros plus potassium. And then usually I buffer magnesium and calcium in my tanks anyway. So basically, my tank is taking care of the nitrates and the phosphates, and my additive is doing the rest, so I'm not getting excessive nitrates. But I only do that where I have a good fish load, and while densely planted, low demand plants. So I've got lots of Java fern or lots of crypts, stuff like that. I look at those things, right? That's where I start looking toward something a little different than, say, your standard Thrive or Easy Green style all-in-one, where it's everything you need. I hope that helps. That's a lot of... It's an in-depth topic, despite seeming like a simple question. Okay, so Victoria Lee. Best tank mates for killifish. Well, okay. One male and one female killifish in like a shoebox. I think for the most part it depends on the type of killifish. Some of your small killifish, even to the size of like your golden Australs, you can probably get away with some form of other community fish. You just want to make sure that they have a big enough body to where they're not at risk of that killifish's mouth being big enough to start swallowing them. You start getting to your bigger ones that kind of get a little more jerky, like think of your blue Galaris or something like that. Realistically, you want to keep those on their own, and they like smaller tanks. The things that killifish thrive in are way different than most of the rest of our kind of generic aquarium fish do best in. So really, killifish, a lot of them, not all of them, of course, there's tons of variety in killifish. There's a billion jillion of them. In the case of killifish, a lot of times they do best as a species only, and often only like a pair or so on their own. And that's kind of what they do for those. But yeah, when you get to some of the smaller ones, especially not the annuals, but some of the longer lived ones that have those like teeny tiny bodies, they can do well with things like your tetras and your rasboras and all that kind of stuff. It's just making sure that they're not super shy, or they're not dealing with some other larger semi-aggressive fish like an apistogramma or a German blue ram or an angelfish that's going to get them too shy to where now they're going to struggle to get food. Right? That's where we have the careful balance of having something where they're not afraid of the other fish in the tank. They also can't pick on the other fish on the tank too much, and everybody's getting their food. That's the kind of balance we want to create. I think you had a question about peat puffers too, right? Best tank mate for a freshwater peat puffer. More peat puffers. You can look at some of your... The big thing you want to deal with is small finnage. You don't want to deal with anything that's long fin with a peat puffer because they'll nip. And they will nip and nip and nip. So you can get some of your faster, small finned fish. They're going to do pretty well. So even like something like a white cloud can do okay. A little bit bigger body, decent speed. Anything like that, more active fish might do well because then they're kind of naturally going to avoid those peat puffers. But in general, I found that like most people who have success with peat puffers, it's kind of just the peat puffers in a tank. And also, yeah, keep in mind, all your killifish are like gold medalist Olympic high jumpers, and they'll fly out of your tank the moment you give them an opportunity to. So make sure you have it lidded. Like if you think a rainbow fish jumps well, killifish put them to shame. Rainbow fish are like, you know, that 6-year-old kid who's jumping in a puddle, and the killifish are like doing the long jump like at an Olympic level. They any moment they can fly out of your tank, they will. So make sure. Oh my, I'm not doing 800 best tank mates. Come on. You're killing me, Victoria. You're killing me. Who do you think I am? Aquarium Co-op? Throw shade because I don't like top 10 lists. That's the joke. I don't like top 10 lists. Oh, man. Okay. There was something else. I want to make sure I don't miss it. Stacy Smallwood. Stacy, I've got to meet at Rusty Wessel's place. It was a blast to sit there and chat. I love the sailfin as well. I brought back some of the Limia perugia. Really cool fish. Yeah, that metallic sheen is very, very cool. And then somebody was mentioning... yeah, there he is. Josh Hayden, Charles Clapsaddle's Midnight Blue Giant sailfin mollies are amazing. For me, I've seen those, and they're cool. There's just something about the natural, like, Yucatan sailfin molly, because it's kind of like the predecessor of all the sailfins, and it is a, like, wild, well, kind of no longer wild, but wild fish. There's something about that fish that is really, really appealing to me. I don't know, I can't really fully explain it other than that, like, faint yellow to the big mohawk, and just the fact that they get huge, chonky fish. They're like 5.5 inches at full size, with that big, giant mohawk on the males. There is just something really appealing to this, like, gigantic molly swimming around with this huge fin on it. I don't know. it's kind of a derpy appearance. But then again, I love rainbow fish, which are beautiful and dumb as all get out. Oh, Lumpy Dog. Lumpy Dog's just like trying to push buttons. Will the Seahawks win 6 games or more this year? I At this point, I significantly hope that they lose a lot of games. While I will personally, as a fan, be depressed, it means that our draft will be better next year. But you know, we're in a hyper competitive division, but we inherently find weird ways to win. So we'll probably do like vaguely okay. We'll probably look all right, but we won't be good. We just won't be. Okay. We're close to. I will kind of end pretty closely at 7 tonight, mostly just because I run out of juice pretty fast. And talking this much takes quite a lot out of me, and I'm surprised I haven't had a giant coughing fit yet. This helps. But I've been doing a lot of talking at work, too. So, yeah. Let me see. I want to make sure I didn't miss... I swear there's another question I want to grab. But, chat, you've been active tonight, which I greatly appreciate. It's good to be back and seeing everybody. So apparently in our short poll, Danger Noodle like absolutely destroyed the potential competition on the towel. So I guess we're gonna have to do Danger Noodle. Here we go. From Omar, who runs an aquarium store. Although I would recommend keeping pea puffers alone, I've had success with auto cats and nearite snails as well as a mono shrimp. Bumblebee gobies are another one, just not for beginners. Yeah, I would definitely not be keeping bumblebee gobies as a beginning fish keeper. But once you get to the point of where you can handle them, they're such a cool fish. They're really, really cool fish. My buddy Alex has some, if I remember correctly. I know he had some for a while. I hope he still has them. But we've dealt with some weird heat waves and stuff that have been hard on certain fish rooms. I will admit that, my own included. Okay. Okay, I'll speed answer this question just for you. Best tank mates for angelfish. Plecos. If you want your angelfish to breed, nothing. Any kind of fast tetra is going to do fine. Rummy noses especially. But in general, you just want to make sure that they have a reasonable sized body to them, but they're not so boisterous and quick to the food that they then kind of make the angels shy. I keep Leopoldi angels. They're a little bit more chunky. They're not as tall a body, but they're a little thicker bodied. And they get in there and get their food. But I keep them with autocinkless, some plecos, and like an SAE. And they do great. The one thing you want to keep in mind is angels get big. They like a lot of swim room. They like some territory, especially if you have a big group of them. So you want to make sure that you're providing all of that and not reducing their swim space too much with a bunch of other fish, because that's when they start becoming bullies and they start fighting a lot. If they have lots of space, they can carve out little chunks of territory for themselves, especially as they start pairing up. They're not going to be a problem if they've got that area that's just like, this is my spot, and everyone stays away. And then the other group is like, this is my spot, and everyone stays away, right? As long as all your angels have their shreds of territory, and then you've got extra space. Look at tetras. Look at a lot of your Amazonian fish. That's where you're going to have your best examples, right? They live with those fish naturally. So that's probably where we're going to have the most success. Just my little 2 cents on that one. So that being said, for the rest of you... So good to be back. Thank you so much. The like 8 million member super chats. It was really great to see a lot of you here. Thank you so much. But yeah, what I will say is, if you are on the northwest side of life, Fishtoberfest, October 8th and 9th, you can see myself there, as well as Chris Biggs, the Mad Aquarist, who was in chat earlier. We're both going to be speaking and talking. Hopefully he brings that fantastic suit that he wore to Triple Crown with him, because you'll see that in the video. It's pretty slick. I like it a lot. And other than that, gang, we'll be back to kind of our normally scheduled program, going with our usual Tuesday night streams and Saturday videos. So thank you all so much for being here. All the well wishes, all those good things. Thank you. I greatly appreciate it all. And as always, stay awesome. Have a good night, folks.